As an author myself, I suppose I do need to release a statement on this, because this has been a trend I've been noticing ever since like the anti-woke movement has taken off, and people have begun like looking at like the political opinions of authors and the publishers, and what you see is this overwhelming left-wing bias, like overwhelmingly. And initially there was this huge hope to think that like, well, only leftists are attracted to creative fields. But obviously what's actually happening is that publishers and other people in creative fields are actively discriminating against conservatives, against straight white men, and are not allowing them to take any positions, have any kind of success, or even get published. Okay, it's become a real problem, and it's very, 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 very observable by simply just looking at how consistently these things play out. Where initially you have this guy who's like publishing a new fantasy series, like, oh man, Dungeon Carl, oh, it's Brandon Sanderson, oh, like, oh, he's so based, he's so traditional, he's so conservative, oh, he's a Mormon, he's my guy, oh, it's like a D&D campaign, it's so traditional and fun, oh, like, you see this, like, initial push to sell you on this idea that these guys are conservative, that they're like our guys, that they represent our interests, and that you should go out and support them. And then you see the reality where they come out and they admit that like, oh no, in actuality, I'm a raging leftist. Oh, I believe in gay rights, and I believe in all the wokest causes. Oh, please, 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 Hollywood, give me a TV deal. Please make movies based on my works. Oh, I'll do anything. I'll throw Critical Drinker under the bus. I'll do anything. Like, we've seen this over and over and over again, to the point where like it really needs to be spelled out that like this is an attempt at astroturfing. One that like I think a lot of people haven't really caught on to yet, or are in denial about, or don't want to like acknowledge. But the simple fact of the matter is, what we're seeing is just an attempt at like subverting people's expectations. What we're seeing is like the industry trying to pull in like conservative readers with all these promises of like this guy being based and traditional and making good fantasy, and the reality is quite a bit different, right? You get race mixing, you get like gay, you get lesbians, you get like all this like deranged shit that like nobody actually wants, and like it's becoming more and more obvious, and more people are starting to notice the pattern, right? Like, I was not surprised at all when like the Dungeon Crawler Carl author came out and like started talking about this, because I'm just like, I've seen this happen so many times before. In fact, I kind of like noticed this even before it became a thing. Like, even before, like, I had a name for it, because I would notice that, like, the industry would rally behind pushing this, like, new creator, this new author, and then you would read it, and you would realize it was just lower quality than the stuff you were already reading. Okay, like, I feel like if you read more than, like, one book a year, you're gonna read something better than, like, Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? The only reason anybody reads these is because, like, they're the ones that the industry is pushing, that they're trying to make a thing, in an attempt, a desperate attempt, to try and normalize, like, their woke culture, to try and normalize, like, certain things into the popular consensus. And what's happening is that more and more is that people like myself do not look at, like, best-selling novels. The only reason I look at, like, current bestsellers is to do research on, like, market trends and try and, like, create things that can, like, capitalize off of that, okay? So, like, for me, like, I don't read new books, okay? Like, I have never read new books. I have always gone back, and I've always, like, read older books from more established people, read stuff, like, written, like, 50 years ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And, like, the difference in quality is just astounding. And it's not just because these are the best of all time, because, there are plenty of books I've picked up randomly that are just, like, so much better than the stuff, like any of the stuff we get today. Like, it really does feel like we've had this, like, massive decline in quality control in everything over the past, like, 70 years. And that's, like, apparent in, like, all aspects of our culture. People see it in film, in TV, in our daily lives, but it's also true in the publishing industry. And, like, what we have to acknowledge is the reason for it, is that these publishers are actively selecting individuals that are willing to advance their communist agenda. They're willing to push anti-white male rhetoric. They're willing to promote homosexuality. They're willing to push all these deranged countercultural things in their work, and in the desperate hope that someday it will be considered acceptable to believe and do these things. It's meant to be cultural degeneration, essentially. But what's interesting is that as quickly as these books come out, what feels like happens is that they become fads. People read them for a little bit, but they don't really remember them at all, and they don't care. Dungeon Crawler Carl, just the name of it. It's so generic and it's so uninspired that once this initial controversy passes, I'm probably not going to think about it again. I think I am going to go ahead and pick up a copy of it at the library so I can do a review, so I can talk about the quality of the book itself and how this was all very obvious from the onset. But the thing about this is these books aren't selling because they're high quality projects and people like them. They're selling because the publisher wants to push them, and they want to push the political messaging onto the general demographic. And that's leading into these situations where more and more people are starting to see through these tactics. They're starting to be at the point that I was 20 years ago, and that is not the point where you want that you want your demographic to be in. Believe me. So what we're gonna see, I feel, is that a lot of people are going to start adapting more severe qualifications. Okay, if people shove a ton of this specific book or author in my face, I immediately assume there's some kind of agenda behind it, that it's some kind of woke subversive slop, and it always is. Again, the best defense against this kind of thing is just knowing a lot about what you're talking about. I feel if you read a lot and you're engaged a lot in the space, and if you're invested in the publishing industry, you're going to look at something like Dungeon Crawler Carl and then just write it off as the generic derivative slop that it actually is, and then just move on. And if enough people do that, these kind of astroturfing campaigns trying to gaslight you into thinking that oh man, the author of Dungeon Crawler Carl is secretly woke. You're just going to be well, first of all, I don't know who that is. And secondly, of course he is, because they're all woke and they're all retarded and none of them make good books. That should be the default reaction to this kind of thing. There shouldn't be this feeling that we were betrayed, or that oh no, I really liked this, and then now I have to deal with the fact that my favorite author is woke. No, the reality is you should be reading better books from the onset, and you should go into this kind of thing knowing that these kind of books can't be trusted, that these kind of authors are indeed astroturfed and don't really have any real qualifications or ability to tell a good story. That becomes very, very obvious. And a lot of other people in the community, including Dave Chadwick, came out and was just Matt Dinniman is a fraud who won the lottery, much the same way Ernest Cline and Andy Weir did, and has gotten people to briefly believe he's a good writer. And like Ernest Cline, in about 5 years, people will realize that he is not a good writer and that Dungeon Crawler Carl is a vomit bag, and they'll wonder why they believed it was ever good. But it'll be too late by then, because all the Ready Player One, The Martian, Dungeon Crawler Carl knockoffs will have flooded the market, and publishers will continue to believe men only want to read immature nerd slop. Again, we're in this phase now where people are starting to notice the patterns and they're beginning to put it all together, but we're not quite there yet. Again, we're quite a ways away from saving the publishing industry, where straight white male writers can be acknowledged as being the best there are at what we do. We're still a long ways away from that, but we're definitely making another major step forward, because I'd only heard about these books recently. And the fact that we're now going through this process of people exposing this guy for being a woke slob, after years of people trying to tell us that Brandon Sanderson was some base traditionalist, this is very reassuring about where things are going. The publishing industry does not have the ability to force people to continually ingest slop.